Hello, everybody. How are you?
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Happy Friday.
All right, I'm looking to see if I have my committee members. Okay, I see Council Member Marcano.
Hello, hello.
Okay,
There we go.
okay. Thank you, Councilmember Marcano. I was kind of looking at you on the thing, but I wanted to make sure you were present, so. Okay, it's 1 o'clock. We have Councilmember Marcano, so that's good. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So we have no consent items. Councilmember Marcano, are you okay with the approval of the minutes? I couldn't hear you. Oh,
Yes,
you are.
ma'am.
Okay, okay. So we'll get those approved and I'll get those signed. So we have Lori. Welcome, Lori, Federal Legislative Update. You're muted.
Sorry. Can't believe I'm still doing that. I'd say it was nice to see several of y'all a couple weeks ago. I look forward to seeing y'all National League of Cities in a few weeks. So Congress is in until the midterm election. So next week is going to be their last week in session before they return the way. I know they were just only here for 2 weeks before they return to campaign at home. Right now, they're working on the Appropriations Bill since Congress didn't have a chance to pass all 12 before the end of the fiscal year, which is in 7 days, September 30th. They're going to pass a continuing resolution to keep the federal agencies funded until December 16th. They're trying to work out some last minute details, how much money to provide for Ukraine. There's an energy permitting bill that Senator Manchin's requested since he supported the Inflation Reduction Act. So we're walking through all those details right now, but it should pass early next week. And then they're going to recess, and then they have a lot to do, of course, before the end of this Congress. They'll have to pass a final omnibus appropriations bill, and that's where our 2 earmarks are. They have to pass a National Defense Authorization Act, an Army Corps of Engineers bill called WRDA. They're going to consider, the Senate's going to consider the same-sex marriage bill that's already passed the House. And they're also going to consider election reform bill on the Senate side. The House passed it last week, and the Senate is trying to decide whether to take up the House version or do their own bill. High level update. And then after they leave, this is new Congress next year. And I'm working with Hannah and Roberto on your DC trip finally, after several years, not be able to come to DC. We're starting to work on that. Any questions?
Councilmember Marcano, do you have any questions for Lori on the
Yes,
federal
ma'am, I
side?
do.
Okay.
Thank you. Lori, so you mentioned an election reform bill. Is this the same one that the Senate filibustered either last night or today? No, okay.
It's different. This is clarifying the vice president's role in certifying presidential elections.
Okay.
And making some other changes to electoral count process. That's a good
Okay.
question.
Are there any more details on that effort that you can share?
I can send Hannah like a summary of it, like a one pager.
Yeah.
Of the bill, just knowing it, the House version probably won't be the House bill. I'm gonna send you a summary. Won't be the final bill if it can pass the Senate.
All right. Thank you.
And then Lori, you said that they're doing some climate change legislation, but it's gonna, with Manchin's input.
So the climate change bill was considered that Inflation Reduction Act, the reconciliation bill they passed before August. But Senator Manchin says you do not have my support of this bill unless you can start streamlining permits for energy projects.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for that, Senator Manchin.
That guy.
So I'll just leave it at that. But thank you, Lori, for that update. Do you have anything else that we need to know from the federal side?
I don't think so. We're at a great meeting with the city departments on planning for your infrastructure projects that you're going to apply for, utilizing the funds from the infrastructure bill. So that was very helpful, and also very helpful to hear from you and City Councilmember Marcano on your priorities.
Well, I really appreciate you, coming out and talking with everyone. I wish there was a few more council members that would have participated, as I stated to you before. So I'm a little disappointed in that, but I'm glad that you, you were available and you were at least able to talk to some.
And Hannah is working on some virtual meetings for the other city council members that
Okay.
had conflicts.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. So, but thank you. It was, I'm sorry I couldn't see you in person, but I'm glad that you were here. So we'll be seeing each other again.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate it. And you have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, we have our state legislative update. Peggy, Totsi, and Cammie, I see you all on board here.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to start our legislative update with a brief summary of the economic forecast that came out yesterday. The Joint Budget Committee heard from both the state legislatures, Economic Forecast Office, as well as the governor's OSPB. And they talked a lot, obviously, about the factors that have gone into the current state of the economy, whether it's the unemployment rate, inflation, housing, employment issues. So, a lot of things that are going to go into the next year of budget setting. Some of the biggest concerns are kind of the unknown inflation pieces that are going on and what that's going to look like. Nationwide, it's 7.9 is the inflation rate. They're expecting Colorado to probably be 8.2, maybe even 8.3. And when that's combined with the federal interest rate and housing prices, the political climate, it puts the economists in a bit of a pessimistic view. So despite the fact that our budget will increase or revenues will come in with another $1 billion, because of Tabor and the price of inflation will actually be at a loss. So, for instance, Senator Hansen talked yesterday about the 3% pay hike that state employees were given. And he said, they're actually receiving a decrease in pay because the inflation has gone up so much. So that kind of calculus has really factored into a lot of the budget discussions that are going on. Right now, it's kind of just behind closed doors. How do they fund Medicaid? How do they fund school finance? How are they going to deal with all of these issues? All the ARPA funding has currently come into the state already. So they're going to be looking at that. They'll start to meet regularly in November. This is the last economic forecast before that will begin. And we'll be monitoring their meetings and letting you know of anything that's going to be directly impacting the city. One thing we have been trying to dig into is money that has come into the state and will flow through the state process and go down to the cities, particularly around cybersecurity, which continues to become more and more of an important issue. Doesn't seem to be a lot of certainty yet on how that process is going to work. We've reached out to CML and the Office of Information Technology, so we'll try to get a little bit more insight on that as they start to figure out what that process is going to look like. But that will be an opportunity for the city to hopefully find some significant funding for an issue that has certainly become more and more important. So that's kind of the economic piece. On the interim committees, they are starting to form their draft bills and discuss those draft bills. This morning we were listening to the Tax Oversight Committee. They have 5 bills that they're going to be moving forward. So we'll get those to you and get you notes on that committee hearing this morning. I know transportation and some of the criminal justice, behavioral health bills have come out. Tatsi, I know you were, I saw that you had just sent those to Hannah. I didn't know if you had any comments you wanted to make on those behavioral health bills.
Whoops. Not right now. I wanted to go through them with Hannah and see which ones might affect the city. And that wasn't behavioral health though, Peggy. I think those were the bills that came out of the committee, the treatment of persons with behavioral health in the criminal justice, juvenile justice system. So I'd sent those to her because they were just released and have to go through them still. But I can move into transportation if you'd like. Hello? I'm sorry.
Oh, Peggy, do you have anything more on your side? Or
Nope,
did you want
nope,
her-
that sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, well, before we move forward, Councilmember Marcano, do you have anything from Peggy's summary that you would like to ask or get any kind of clarification on?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, okay, Tatsi?
Yeah, hi, everybody, and good afternoon. I just wanted to bring you up to date on what the TLRC did vote out of committee on Monday. Or Tuesday rather, they had 10 bills in front of them and 3 were withdrawn, but they moved forward a bill that would help fleet operators and owners, mostly the rental car agencies in that industry, go ahead and fleet plates, or plate their fleet as cars come in. Right now, that industry says that, they have cars that don't have plates on them, they go out of state, the plate would expire, and that's difficult for the renter, should it be in Utah, Wyoming, or wherever. That bill came out, and the next bill that they passed out of committee was one that would expand the move over, slow down statute that requires drivers to slow down, move over a lane when they are passing an emergency vehicle or a tow truck, something like that, a utility service vehicle. Now, any vehicle that is on the side of the road would be included, and drivers would have to pass or move over, pass, slow down. They passed out one where a driver would have to yield to larger vehicle in roundabouts. As roundabouts become more prevalent around the state, semis have a harder time getting around them. So they're moving that bill forward. They are moving forward a bill that would require more driver's education for drivers 21 years and under. This bill just would provide a tax credit for purchasing driving school or training for minors. And those drivers who are under 21 who have already gone through that process kind of expands driver's education. And then they are kind of updating the civil penalties that could be levied on commercial motor carriers for failure to comply with rules for safe operations. There's one bill that did not come out of that committee that I think the city should be aware of, and that is the bill that Bicycle Colorado is promoting that would require surveillance on roads to slow drivers down. The bill met with a lot of pushback from the committee and from others, so they pulled the bill, but it's been in the media a lot since Tuesday, and I know that they will be bringing forward a bill that you would be allowed to set up cameras on your main thoroughfares to catch speeders. One part of the bill that's meeting a lot of pushback, and I think that they will change this. Meetings are supposed to be starting on this bill in the next month or two, according to Bicycle Colorado. But the piece that is upsetting to a number of folks is that no matter who is driving your vehicle, the vehicle owner would be cited. So that's something that I think we should keep an eye out for, depending on how the city wants to handle that, given the voters said no to red light cameras. That's about all I have right now.
Peggy, I mean, Tatsi, I have just a couple questions.
Sure.
You know, one of the things that I've noticed, I know about the driver's ed, you know, and I know that there is a lot of driving schools, and I heard the licensing is pretty easy to get for these schools to form. The reason I bring this up is because there seems to be some, and I know somebody who went to one, and I'm not going to say the location, but it was really, 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 really shady. Like, have they looked into the licensing of how these schools are being formed? Who's doing these schools? I mean, you know, driving is really important. But, and I'm not saying that I'm just looking at something, the person that I know that went to one of these to get the driver's license, because you know, at this DMV, you can't do the driving license, you can't take the test. Like you can't take the driving test, so you have to go to one of these driving schools. Where she went, it was shady, and she saw them just giving out just giving out these passing people. And they have so many of these schools, and I heard the licensing is so easy, but are people really getting trained in the right way and should be driving or not? So I'm just wondering, has there ever been anything looked upon into that issue of all these driving schools that we see around? And how people are getting it, and are they really legitimate and doing what they're supposed to do according to the guidelines of the state?
That was briefly touched upon. Just that question was briefly touched upon on Tuesday, Councilmember Lawson, but no, there was no discussion about it. If that's something that, you know, you'd like us to look into, I can certainly talk to the Department of Revenue, DMV, and you know, law enforcement about it.
Well, I know somebody who did this, and I'm just saying, and we see a whole bunch of, and I've just been noticing a lot of the driving kind of schools or whatever around driving around. And I just heard the license, and I'm just wondering I don't know the exact guidelines, what's needed, but I'm just saying, it seems to me, are people just making money off people, and are we really getting safe driving? Or are they just passing people just because? And are they legitimate? And I think that I would like to have something maybe looked into just to get some information on it, and, you know, see about looking at something further. So,
Sure, I can talk to the Department of Revenue that
okay.
handles all that.
Okay, Councilmember Marcano?
Yes,
Sorry
ma'am.
for my big spiel on everything.
No,
but
you're
go
good. Actually, I wanted to touch on what you just said a bit here because, all right, so I got my license in Texas where you go to the DMV and they test you through the DMV. It's not a contractor. So that is not how it operates in Colorado. Is that what I'm hearing?
Not any longer.
Okay.
We've contracted out to the schools or these driving schools.
Yeah, these
as-
different driving schools.
Mhm.
And I guess I'm curious to know what the regulatory oversight looks like. So I completely agree with what Councilmember Lawson just brought up. Because, you know, I know every generation always thinks the generation that's coming after them is like doing everything wrong. But holy cow, I think since the pandemic, we have definitely seen some really dangerous driving. And a lot of the folks behind the wheel, when they go flying by me, they definitely look like they're much younger. So I'm wondering what's going on there. So,
Okay, well, I'll look into that and get back to you guys.
all right, thank you.
Thank you so much on that, Tatsi.
Not a problem.
Anything else, Cammie, from your side? Okay, so it looks like we've got,
Thank you.
okay. Councilmember Marcano, do you have anything from the state side that you want to talk to based on what we just discussed?
Nothing further.
Okay, so we're going to go into 4A, which is the CML update. I have everyone on here. I think I see Trevor and I see Jessica to talk a little bit about these initiatives. So we had our CML board meeting, executive board meeting on September 9th. And we talked about 4 different propositions, and we basically to get a vote from the CML for support or non-support. And so I'm just going to kind of start, in Jessica, we can go with the first one. It was Prop 123. So this is the dedicated revenue for affordable housing programs. Now, for transparency, I didn't have all of my information, so I was the only absentee vote on this one because I had some questions about that. but it did pass with CML support. So that one did pass for CML support on that one. And Jessica, I know I talked to you and Roberto I talked to Roberto on the day of the meeting, but I wanted to have you here to kind of give an update, and then your, the position of the city.
Sure. So Councilmember Lawson, our staff, we have listened in on a few webinars and things like that just to kind of educate ourselves on this proposition. We've also run some numbers. And so I would say from a staff perspective, there is nothing that's a mandate that would, be an impact on staff capacity or anything like that. It looks to be an opportunity to augment our community investment process that we currently have in place. We liked the fact that there was some set aside for very low income or folks experiencing homelessness. And then on the 3% increase over baseline, we currently to date have about 6,143 affordable units in Aurora. These are deed restricted units. Most of these are multifamily is what we're looking at. We had 4,743 in 2020. So we've added and incentivized about 1,400 in the past 3 years through our community investment process, and we've been able to increase that number. So at the 3% year over year from that baseline, now we'd be at about 185 units per year, and that feels very doable given what we've been doing. I looked at about a 10-year look back to 2010 on average, how many units. So feels very in line with what we're currently doing. And I think any additional funds to put towards, affordable housing would be helpful. It feels written in a way that's broad enough that we could support both homeownership and rental. So from our perspective, obviously we haven't done an extreme deep dive, but run some numbers and looked at some things. It looks doable. And then the other piece commitment was related to a development review and incentives for affordable. We have currently a grant from the state right now to be looking at how we can do other types of incentives with development review, fee waivers and things like that. So feels very in line with our housing strategy. And I'd recommend that the city support it.
Okay, and Jessica, thank you for hitting the highlight, because that was one of the talking points at the meeting, was the development review process and the capacity that cities and jurisdictions have. So basically, from what you're saying, we would have the capacity to meet these goals if this passed. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I did check in with Janine Roosted too from planning. So we had a conversation and, it's an optional fast track process. And again, we've already hired the consultant to take a look at that. So it doesn't feel burdensome at this point.
And then one of the things that most of the jurisdictions that were represented, they really wanted to make sure that they got the input from their housing authority. How does our housing authority feel about this? Which I'm probably sure they support, but I just want to ask that as well.
I did have a brief conversation with Craig from the Housing Authority, and he pretty much said, "Yep, it looks good to me." So
okay. Okay.
He had listened in on the same webinar as we had through Housing Colorado. And so he was like, it feels like there's more things that the city would need to do than the Housing Authority, was his sentiment.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Marcano, do you have any questions on that particular initiative and what has been discussed?
No, I'm just generally supportive of this. So I'm excited to see that CML also supports.
As well. Okay, so we have Trevor Vaughn. So the next propositions that were discussed at the CML executive board that the board took positions on was 123, 126, 124, and I think 125. So Trevor, do you want to kind of put those in a broader context and give us your perspectives on those?
Yeah, I'll start with the Proposition 126, third-party delivery of alcohol beverages. This one's probably one as far as maybe a most direct impact with regards to public safety. And this one allows, obviously, third parties to deliver alcohol, and they would, under this proposal, they would only be permitted by the state licensing authority and not local. So I think from that aspect, when you're talking about something that's particularly regulated product like alcohol, may be considered less than ideal, because then we don't have that civil recourse against a license or permit that the city can do if there are violations of the liquor code or problems with the permittee. On the other side of that, we have had a situation for a number of years now where liquor stores throughout the state can deliver with only a state permit. And they've been delivering into Aurora from other jurisdictions, relatively little issues in those regards, but we also don't have civil recourse again on them. There is still the criminal approach that the city could take if somebody delivers or allows a delivery to an intoxicated person or a minor, then they could be criminally cited for doing that. So you'd still have that, but usually the bigger tool is to hit the business itself, so that they have the proper training, policies, procedures in place to make sure that doesn't happen in the first place. So we'd just be relying upon the state. If this was to pass, relying upon the state for those civil actions. So that's 126, and I can keep going if you want.
No, that's fine. And I just wanted to put out that the executive board supported the CML staff's position of oppose on that bill. So.
All right.
And 124, sorry, these are a little out of order, Trevor, from what I was writing things down as we were voting on them. So we kind of took a little things out of order. So we did 126 and then we went to 124. So I'm just looking at my notes. So sorry, they're a little out of order how I'm doing this.
No problem. I'm looking at the same notes and they're in the same order.
Okay,
So,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
I'll talk about Proposition 124 and 125 together as far as our impacts on them. Really, this comes down to the history of the liquor code that has a 3-tier structure, and a lot of lobbying throughout history to kind of protect financial interests in each point of the tier, and the ability for liquor stores to sell off premise versus other bars and restaurants that sell on premise. And so historically, you used to only be able to have a financial interest in one liquor store, and that's all you could have. And then they a number of years ago expanded to start allowing this phase in for interest in multiple liquor stores, and also allowed for full strength beer to be sold in grocery and convenience stores rather than 3-2 beer. So both of these are obviously put on by large financial interests, large business entities. I don't know that there's a huge, public safety risk with these. Maybe in some cases you're going to see a lot more wine, so you start to get a little bit heavier alcohol content, at your 7-Elevens potentially, your various convenience stores. So you may have a little bit more alcohol availability out there. I think probably, if anything was to look at this, our liquor stores, because of that structure, have, are small businesses and oftentimes are immigrant owned and have a, more diversity with their ownership. And that's just something, as far as from that standpoint, that I just thought I would mention, whereas these bills will more benefit the larger corporations.
So on these two bills, on the ones that you're referencing, the board supported the CML's staff's recommendation of no position on both of these bills. So, Councilmember Marcano, do you have anything on the CML update from the executive board meeting?
Not on those items.
Okay. Okay. So we will move on to our 2023 state and federal legislative priorities, and we have Hannah.
Hi, council members. You have in your backup some revised priorities, the draft federal and state priorities. We incorporated your feedback from our last FSIR meeting and your feedback in between, along with some work with departments. On the federal, we incorporated a request for some more regional transit language, and then several items on the state side, including more specific language on housing affordability and transit. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Councilmember Marcano, do you have any questions on the federal and state priorities? And I thank you for making any kind of revisions and updates to these.
Yeah, and actually I apologize because I saw the reminder email that y'all sent out on the 14th. That was right when we were flying out to Houston, and I am just now getting to my emails from the 14th. So I actually did have three notes here that I wanted to see if we could add into the housing section. And I will say the transportation section is great because one of the additions there is it's right along the lines of what I wanted to submit with regards to new developments and planning for public transportation. But on the housing side, I wanted to add a note in there supporting a no eviction without representation kind of program for the whole state. Aurora is if I'm not mistaken, is still the eviction capital of Colorado, meaning we have more evictions than any other jurisdiction per capita here in Colorado. And I think that that's something that directly contributes to homelessness. And what we found is that if folks actually have representation when they're being evicted, they can ending up on the street, getting, either into like a payment plan or into some other kind of transitional housing through an agreement, as opposed to just being, kicked out with all their possessions.
Okay, so I know that we mentioned eviction, but you want something more specific of what you stated in language into that topic.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. I would agree to that, Hannah, if we could put that in there.
Great. Yep. Eviction without
Yeah, I would agree. Specifically what Councilmember Marcano said. I think we have a general broad thing talking about eviction, but he has something specific, so.
Yeah. The second note I wanted to add was a repeal of the statutory rent control prohibition. I feel like that should be a matter of local control as opposed to statewide concern. And without that important tool, more and more of our naturally occurring affordable housing is very quickly disappearing as it gets gobbled up by institutional investors. So the goal would be to discourage institutional investors from acquiring property and jacking up rents so that folks can actually stay housed. And that'll also help with employment in the metro, in our city. And, if we can do this statewide in the entire state, as folks will actually be able to live off of salaries that don't need to be, what is it right now in Arapahoe County, $51,000, if I'm not mistaken, to afford a one-bedroom apartment. So I think it's an important part of the overall puzzle.
Well, I know Councilmember Peggy and Tatsi, I know I've talked to many of our delegation about what you're stating. It's a hard concept for outside investors. I know that I brought it up to each one of our delegation that I've met with in the past 3 weeks. We could put it in there. I agree with you putting it in there. It's going to be a lofty goal and to get support on it. But I do agree with you on that part of it, of the outside investors and what can we do? Because that is part of the puzzle of why rents are increasing, because they're taking over a lot of these buildings and they're buying single family homes.
Yes.
And they're just not, they're not even putting people in them, but they're raising rents and they're just kind of keeping them as property investments. And I do agree with you on that. Tatsi and Cami and Peggy, I've had these discussions with everyone. I'm willing to put it in there, but it is a lofty goal for us to.
And I just want to add, Councilmember Lawson, I'm in agreement with you. I know it's a very challenging hurdle, but what I have been told by our delegation and folks who are working on this issue is that support from a city like Aurora will help push the envelope a bit in the right direction. So, us saying this is something that's a priority for us as the third largest city in Colorado will carry a lot of weight.
Well, I will agree with you to put it onto the goals. However, that this has to go over to our full council.
Yes, I know.
There may be some debate on that one for sure.
Almost certainly will be.
Okay, if we can add that, Hannah, I'm sorry, Councilmember Marcano, I will agree with you to put that on there, specifically on the outside investment piece on that. If we could do that, Hannah, and add that, I would be agreeable to that.
Okay, great. We'll add.
And do you have another one, Councilmember Marcano?
One more, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I've heard a lot from folks in Aurora who live in mobile home parks, and they are really, really concerned about losing their homes because of lot rents continuing to go up. So very similar to what we just discussed with regards to single-family housing and naturally occurring affordable housing through older apartment complexes. A lot of mobile home parks are being bought out by coastal capital, basically, and the lot rents are being raised pretty aggressively. to the point where I've gotten emails with folks who are, they don't think that they'll be housed anymore within 6 months to a year because of how frequently they're raising and by the severity. So I know that the state legislature tried to tackle this issue earlier this year. That Senate bill ended up, I forget which number it was, but it did end up getting watered down substantially. So I would like to propose adding a line to basically return what was taken out of the bill with regards to lot rents. And basically amend the law in the upcoming session.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Marcano, I'll agree with you to put that in there. Again, like I said, we're with the committee. We still have to, this has to go to the full council. So there may be some debate on some of these additions, even some of the ones I've added as well. So, but I would agree. So Hannah, can we add those 3 to the housing topic that Councilmember Marcano mentioned? And Councilmember Marcano, do you have any other before I go to some of the other city staff that's on here, do you have any other additions that you want to make to the state priorities? Or are they?
Yes. One more on
Okay.
public safety, if I may.
Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
And for this is I would like to see funding for a study and proposal for solutions on the root causes of criminal activity in the state of Colorado. We have really good information here in Aurora. I'm not sure if that's necessarily true throughout the rest of the state and other jurisdictions. But what research shows is that, if you overlay basically the parts of our city that have high rates of crime, but then you also look at educational attainment, wages, housing insecurity, etc., it's the same map. So I'd like to see if the state legislature would be interested in exploring that issue more in depth and then coming up with remedies through legislative action, preferably in the form of grant funding for localities to be able to invest in those areas and address those root causes. Because I think that's how we'll really start building a safer city and a safer state overall.
Okay, that's okay. That's going to be a hard sell too, maybe.
Sure.
But
I understand that not all of this is a given, but I think it's important to have the conversation. So
okay, if we could put that on the list too, Hannah, and that would be great on that.
Great.
Wonderful, thank you.
Working on some language for that.
Anything else, Councilmember Marcano, for the priorities on your side as being part of the committee?
Yeah, that's all for this guy. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so Hannah, we have like 4 additions that we need to make. I guess what I wanted to recommend, because I want to get these over to the council for review and for passage. If I go ahead and if Councilmember Marcano and I agree to move these forward with those amendments, can we move those over to the study session that we need to, instead of delaying to another meeting?
That sounds good to me. We can do that with your additions. And then we also have not gone to council members outside of Pfizer for their feedback. So we'll do that as well, hopefully preparing for that study session, if that makes sense.
Okay, so then I probably misspoke here. I thought that process had been done. So we haven't went to other council members as of yet. So we may need to, okay, so I need to probably
Pfizer approval. So we went through this first round and then we'll go to other council members as we move to study session as well.
Okay, so let's, we definitely to make sure that that's done. We have the reach out for other council members to provide input on these priorities. So we need to definitely make sure that that's done. So with that being said, if our next meeting, I think, is scheduled for October 28th. Do you plan on trying to do that before, and then this needs to come back to the committee again for final approval? Is that how we should gauge this?
I don't know, Roberto, if you want to jump in. My understanding.
Roberto, can you just provide some guidance here of what we should do?
And then go to study session along with that other feedback, but I might have my sequencing off.
Yeah, my thought is to just take it to the October 17th study session. We can solicit via email council suggestions, and they can have that discussion at the study session on October 17th, with the foundation being the ones that you just approved today with the additions that Councilmember Marcano had. So that would be my thought. I can do that reach out via email. say that we're
Okay.
going to have this meeting on the 17th, study session to discuss the attached FSIR approved ones. And if they have any additions or other items they'd like to be included, to please let us know, and we can do that and put that in the backup for the 17th.
Okay, that sounds good, Roberto. So, because I don't want to delay too much longer. So if we're giving them, the other council members the opportunity, then they will have that opportunity. If they don't take it, then, we'll just move forward with what we have for discussion.
That's
So,
right.
so Councilmember Marcano, do you agree with that plan to do what Roberto just stated? Okay, so we'll move forward in that direction, Hannah. Okay, is there any other departments? I saw Judge Day on here, and I thought I saw Chief Oates as well. Judge Day, do you have any other comments? I know that I'm presenting at CML with the proposal for the task force. So I'm working on that, but did you have any other additions that you wanted to talk about, or anything that you wanted to bring forth based on these priorities?
No, thank you, Madam Chair and Councilmember McConnell and the rest of the participants in today's meeting. I'm sorry that I missed the meeting on September the 1st. I apologize because I know this particular topic, the court modernization and data sharing topic, was brought up on the 1st, and I apologize I wasn't there to answer any questions that you may have. Number one, I'd just like to thank you and your leadership for pushing this forward with CML and the backing of our city. I hope that our city's leaders would unanimously support this particular initiative, because it is so important for, I think, all courts, not just municipal courts, but all courts. And I wanted to let you know, the committee know, that we did bring this up to Justice Boatwright, Chief Justice Boatwright. He's aware of the initiative and the idea and proposal. So that's been brought to the Supreme Court's attention as well. I'm hoping that we'll have some pretty strong support coming from state judicial as well, but I don't know that just yet. So wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. One thing that I did think was of a little bit of a concern, and that is just kind of the title of the initiative itself. Sometimes people get so fixated with just the title of what the initiative is and not really look at the full body or what the initiative specifically addresses. That the title of court modernization and data sharing, sometimes people will, when they've heard of that, they think, well, are you going to give us money to update our building? Or are you giving us money to update, brick and mortar stuff? And no, that's not what it's about. It's more of just trying to bring everybody up to speed with the concept of sharing data and information between municipal courts and state court. And so I don't know if some consideration or some thought could be given to what the actual initiative title would be, if it's more just simplified of court data sharing and kind of take out that modernization part of it. There, I think you would probably take away some potential, and that's all it is just potential confusion to, I think, with what the initiative or the goal really is. So those are my updates and two cents as it relates to this. But again, thank you all for your leadership on this, because it is a very important initiative and issue.
Well, stay on just a minute, Judge Day. Peggy has something that she wants to comment on, and I have a question as well. So Peggy?
Yeah, I think Judge Day's comments are great. What about something around modernizing security aspects of court or something? There's going to be a lot of focus this year on security, and certainly there can't be an argument that some of these modernizations and enhancements would certainly provide a much more secure aspect for a lot of the information the courts are dealing with. So that's something maybe we can just kind of bounce around some emails and try to come up with a couple options that might work.
Yeah, and Judge Day, just for context as well, I know that we submitted the proposal over to CML, I think this week. So we have our meeting on October 9th. So if we're going to change some titles or do anything like that, that might be, or if we need to input that, that might be something we need to do, so I can include that in the presentation, or
The title just needs to be for when you give it to the
okay.
legislative process. So I
Oh,
think
okay,
you've
okay.
probably got some flexibility.
On that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I'll certainly throw some ideas towards Hannah. Maybe we can bounce a few ideas and then run them by you guys.
Well, the reason I bring that up, it may be good just to kind of maybe mention it if there's a question with the committee about what Judge Day just stated about modernization. So it may be just good for me to have a note on that we're looking at a title change or something like that that's more in sequence with if we go with cybersecurity or whatever it may be. So I'm just saying for my own preparation.
Or even just adding technology before modernization. I don't know. I mean, it can be a simple fix. I'm just throwing it out because when I brought it up with other people, they're like, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about modernization? And it was, I knew what we were talking about, but the other people, when I told them about the title of kind of what the initiative was, they kind of got lost a little bit. So I'm only bringing it up. It's not a criticism of anybody who came up with that title. It's just,
Oh, no, Judge Day, no, but if we could work on something to craft, that would be good. And I'm just saying, just as a prep, what I have in front of me that I'm presenting on October 9th for the meeting, I think that meeting's October 9th, it's just the basic summary, but there may be a question. So it may be good to have something, just a note that we're looking at title change or something like that. I don't know, or we're working on something, or we might even have something. So if you'd be willing to work on that, that would be fantastic.
Happy to help any way I can.
Okay, Councilmember Mercano, do you have any ideas on that, or do you have any questions about anything that you want to ask Judge Day?
No, it does sound like y'all have had part of a conversation that I haven't necessarily been privy to, but based off of what's in our backup, I am supportive of what the direction y'all are moving in. So
okay, okay. Thank you, Councilmember Mercano. Sorry to kind of go off board on some of this other stuff, but we have been kind of working on this for a long time. So
all right, good.
Okay, thank you, Judge Day. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your feedback as well. Is there any other departments that want to talk on any of our priorities before we move on to our water update? Okay, I don't hear anything. So water update. So
sorry, Councilmember Lawson.
Uh-huh.
I thought we were going to touch on federal as well, since we
I'm sorry, the federal I thought Lori kind of touched it, but let's touch on the federal priorities. Thank you for putting me in line. Hannah, do you want to kind of go over the federal priorities? I know that Lori touched on some of them, but let's go over those as well.
Sure, Lori touched on some. We went over these at our last meeting with a little less feedback than the state ones to make some changes. So in between, we added some language on regional transit, looking at ways we can support a more regional view in the transit projects we're advocating for. Happy to answer any other questions or take additional comments on these.
Okay, Councilmember Mercano, do you have anything that you want to add or anything that you need clarification on?
Yeah, I do have one bullet that I would like to add under housing and homelessness.
Okay.
And that would be as part of the request from the city to repeal the Faircloth Amendment.
Okay. Okay, we can go ahead and add that one.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else, Councilmember Mercano, on any of the other priorities? I mean, in federal priorities that you think that we missed, or
not
what you looked at from what you've been able to look at? I mean, anything else on those categories?
We can always add more, but this is already a pretty ambitious agenda, and we'll see how Congress looks like in the next year. But yeah.
Well, it's always good to have more and have a wish list. You never know. So
for sure.
Councilmember Mercano just covered my caveat that I think we mentioned last time, that depending how the midterms go, I think we'll feel a need to revisit these.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is definitely now, there's definitely room to add more as well. These also have not gone in front of your council colleagues, so we'll do the same process if that's okay with you.
Okay, I am agreeing to that. Councilmember Mercano, you're agreeing to the same process. Okay,
yes,
we're good. Okay, now I'm back on track. Let's go ahead and do the water update. We have Kathy Kitzman. Hi, Kathy. I haven't seen you forever. It's good to see you. You're muted. You're still muted.
Still muted. Yeah.
Hear me now?
I can.
Yes. Good to be back. And for you today, I've got one action item and two update items. And the action item is in your packet, and it's time for our state affairs lobbying contract renewal. And so we do a competitive bid every 3 years. And in that RFP, say that it is renewable for 2 additional years. And so this would be the third year since we have done that open RFP. And my state affairs team within the water department, they fully support renewing Colorado advocates for another third year. And so the question for FSIR is, do you support the Colorado Advocates contract for services from November 2022 through October 2023 be placed on purchasing's next weekly report for city council approval?
Okay. They seem like they've been doing an excellent job over the year, so I'm fine with moving it forward for approval. I approve it and moving it forward to the next council meeting. Councilmember Mercado?
Ditto.
Okay.
Thank you. And then next year, we'll do the open RFP, again, the competitive process, probably starting in July or August of 2023. Let's see, and then my update items. Thank you very much for approving the campaign letter by email that did get out to the elected officials. And so I just wanted to see if there was any questions on the Campbell National Monument issue, and also let you know that we sent a technical letter to the Forest Service detailing our water rights. And I'd offer to you, if you wanted to read additional material from us, if you would like to see the technical letter, I'm happy to forward that.
I would like to see it. I mean, just so we're abreast of everything that's going on. So I do reading, and so I know Councilmember Mercado does. So it would be good just to have that information, so we know if we're ever asked a question or anything, we have it in front of her. We have the insight on it. So if you could send it, that would be fantastic.
And I'll also include Colorado Springs Utilities did a separate letter to their elected, so I'll include that as well, just for a complete 3-letter packet.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so much for that on Kathy. I appreciate it. Do you have any other updates?
Just one other. We're watching the interim committees, and the water committee, they voted on 9 bills yesterday, and actually out of the 9 that they were considering, 7 were withdrawn, and they only passed through 2 for water.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of work went into it, and only 2 came out for committee bills. And
only 2 bills?
Can you give us more details as to why? That's a huge fall off rate.
On some of the bills, there just needed to be additional work on revisions. There was some contradictions in like one of the bills with current water law and past bills that were passed on a certain subject matter. And so there was probably 3 or 4 bills where it was just acknowledged that they weren't as refined as they could be. So we might see the individuals continue to work on them, and they still might come out in state session as individual bills, but they weren't in the form necessary to get out of committee.
Wow.
So that was a little bit of surprise. And then there will be, I think, 9 wildfire bills considered next week in the Wildfire Matters interim committee. So we're watching those. And
Are those, sorry if I can jump in, are those complementary to one another, or are they each hitting on a separate issue area? I mean, that seems like a lot for a specific topic, you know?
They are separate. So in the Wildfire Matters Review Committee, a lot of it has to do with staffing and resources that don't overlap necessarily with the watershed water rights issues. And then, of course, the Water Resources Review Committee, they expanded their purview too. They are now the Water Resources and Agricultural Review Committee. So you've got wildfire matters that's firefighters and that, and then the other area. So we watch both. And I'll give an update at the next Pfizer of what bills came out of wildfire.
It seems like there's going to be a lot on legislative session on water and the wildfire stuff, and probably a lot of other things pertaining to water and water conservation and everything, probably next year at the legislature.
It feels like it, and in the Water Resources Review Committee, that one of the 2 bills that passed out was that the Water Resources and Agricultural Review Committee would no longer be interim, that it would be year-round. So I don't know if that will actually pass, but that's one of them that they're considering.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kathy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank
Actually,
you so much, Kathy. Go ahead,
sorry,
Councilmember
Lawson.
O'Connor.
Yeah,
I
if I
didn't
can
mean to
just
interrupt.
no, it's okay. I just noticed that we're kind of taking a more casual, like, conversational approach to the meeting, and I'm great with that. I just don't want to step on your toes either. So,
Oh, no, go ahead.
but yeah, Kathy, so with the name change for that committee, does that also signal like a change in the posture since they're adding in agricultural to this with regards to water use? Because I do know that a lot of our municipalities, obviously are with us leading the way, but others are going to be probably following with some pretty aggressive water conservation measures. Is the state looking at tamping down on waste now in the agricultural sector, since that is where the bulk of our water goes?
I haven't seen any proposals on making agricultural more efficient. It's always in the discussions. Of course, in the Colorado Water Plan is out for comments again until September 30th. So that's the second revision of the water plan. I don't expect anything significant in legislative form this next session, just continued discussion. As far as the committee adding agriculture, the water community was a little bit disappointed because it takes the focus off of water and potentially they could get distracted with agricultural bills. It more brings in the food packaging bills and that type of agricultural bills into the committee potentially. So it doesn't change the focus of what would be there for water.
Okay, I see. My initial interpretation of that was that, within the lens of water, we're going to start looking at agriculture as well, not we're going to just take all the agriculture stuff to the same committee. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for your for the updates and the summaries as always. So I really appreciate it. So we're looking forward to hearing everything that's going to be coming forward, and it looks like it's going to be a lot. So
thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Thank you, Kathy. Councilmember Mercano, do you have any other miscellaneous matters for consideration or any topics that you would like to discuss? Okay. Are you good with the October 28th right now, 28th meeting at 1 o'clock?
1 sec here, 28th, 1 o'clock. I have a conflict.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how about this, Councilmember Mercano, whenever one of us has a conflict, we'll have Hannah just send out an email of times that we can always change that meeting, or do you have an idea right now that we can discuss?
I could do the 26th which is Wednesday at 1. I just had the Arapahoe County Homelessness Coordinating Committee at plenary at 1 o'clock on Friday. So.
Okay, so I could do the 26th at 1 as well, Hannah, but just put it out. You might want to put it out as well to Councilmember Gardner. I know he hasn't been attending the meetings for whatever reason, but just put it out to him because he's still part of the committee to see if that would work for him as well.
Great. I will check with
October 26th and to everyone else, October 26th, because that would actually work with my schedule as well.
Great. Thank you.
I'll check in with everyone and we'll get it moved if it works.
Okay, and then we'll get a confirmation, Councilmember Marcano, and get that date changed.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, thank you everyone for attending the meeting, and have a great weekend, and we'll be talking soon.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Everyone.